Well, welcome everybody to the Winter Organic Grain webinar series, the first of its kind for the Land Connection, to open this up to the public. And I'm really glad that you're here, and I'm really grateful that you've taken the time, especially in the evening, to join this space. So my name is Katie Bishop, for those of you that don't know me, and I am the Organic Grain Mentorship Coordinator with the Land Connection. And I'm also a farmer at PrairiErth Farm here in central Illinois, where we raise organic grain for the most part. And it's an incredible gift, to gather with you all and gather with people who care about organic grain farming and the future of our food system. So thank you for being here today. I'd like to begin by just briefly grounding us in the mission of the Land Connection for those of you who might not be familiar with the work that we do. So our mission is to train farmers in resilient, restorative farming techniques, inform the public about where our food comes from and why that might matter, and protect and enhance farmland so that we and our generations to come have clean air and water and fertile soil and healthy, delicious food. And so we carry this work forward through three real core areas of focus, and that's healthy farms, healthy food, and healthy communities. And we do that through these 5 areas of focus. So today's webinar fits under that farmer and food business training, where a lot of what we do is train different types of farmers, everything from agronomy basics like our mechanical weed control field days to business training and legal training. And we also have a farmers market in Champaign-Urbana, where we work a lot with food access, making sure folks have access to healthy, fresh, local fruits and vegetables. We have our Illinois Farm Link program that links landowners with farmers to make sure that that's a perfect match. We're like little matchmakers. And we also do a lot of local food education within central Illinois specifically. So we are doing a lot. I am not doing all of those things. I am just the Organic Grain Mentorship Coordinator, but my team, my colleagues, and I are always busy with the next thing. Okay, so in today's webinar, we're going to really explore what a full year of farming looks like through the lived experience of 2 organic grain growers, 2 very different organic grain growers. And I just want to say that this, first of all, so I don't forget, this session is made possible thanks to some support from the Builders Initiative. So we're really grateful for their partnership to help make this learning possible and pay a decent stipend to our speakers to reward them for their time. So before I begin, I also just want to share that Hans is not feeling super great today. So we're going to give him a lot of permission to go on mute and cough. So if he has to stop in the middle of his presentation and cough, he has all the permission to talk slow. But also, we're going to kind of adjust our flow a little bit, and he's going to share first, and then we'll open it up for questions for him if you guys have any. And then we're going to send him to bed, and we will have Seneca pop on, and we'll do the same thing with her. But if you have questions during this process at any time, feel free to just put them in the chat, or if you need clarification, you can take yourself off mute too. Okay. So with that, I'm honored to welcome Hans Bishop of PrairiErth Farm. It is not a coincidence, by the way, that we have the same last name. So if you don't know, this is my husband. We're in the same house and we farm together on the same farmland. But he is the perfect person for this presentation. I was just lucky enough to be able to ask him from across the room instead of sending him an email. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that Hans can. Hans, thank you for coming on, not feeling super well, but I'm going to turn it over to you.
Anytime.
All right, go for it.
Hello to the cities. Hopefully I can make it through this, and I apologize if I don't always hit the mute button when I am coughing, but I appreciate the understanding. So, as Katie said, my name's Hans Bishop. Katie and I run PrairiErth Farm in Atlanta that my dad started a number of years ago and transitioned to organic. And we came into the operation in 2009 and started growing vegetables, And in 2019, he retired and we bought him out. And we have grown the operation from there. And presently we grow on about 750 acres. 260 of that is certified organic, 300 of it is in transition, and the rest of it is conventional. So I think probably most folks in here kind of know what the rhythms are on an organic farm, but I'm going to try to give a broad 30,000-foot view. And if you have any questions, feel free to stop me and ask. Um, and without further ado, we'll get into it. So first, we're going to just kind of have a overview of the seasons. Obviously, everybody knows the seasons are, but I consider winter in December through February, and a lot of that time is just spent reflecting on the previous season, creating a plan for the next season, maybe selling crops from the previous season's harvest, doing some repairs, resting, and then doing fertility needs to get a jump start on the coming season. There's a few like collar activities I think of that occur kind of late winter, early springish, and some of those would be like frost seeding a something like clover or alfalfa into a crop of wheat or rye, and maybe applying other micronutrients and stuff like that, doing soil samples, etc. In the spring, we're fulfilling our plan with taking down cover crops, getting fields ready, doing stale seed bedding. And one of my big passions from growing organic vegetables was organic weed control, and we had a lot of cool tools. With row crops, some of the tools are bigger, so we don't quite have the arsenal that we had with vegetables, although we're building on that. So when I talk about stale seed bedding, we're trying to prepare like false seed beds, and because we're not using chemicals, we are using tillage to eradicate weeds, and hopefully we can time that in front of a rain so we can actually get weeds to germinate, preparing that false seed bed. And before we plant the crop, we'd like to try to get at least 2 or 3 of those in. And by crop, I mean like your regular cash crop of corn and soybeans. But also, spring would be taking down cover crops or, doing other things in the early spring with repairs and maintenance to get the machinery ready to head to the field, which is almost where we're at now, thankfully. Summer is, and obviously in the spring we're planting our crops too, but summer is a lot of cultivating and scouting the fields, looking at them for weed or pest pressure. And then later in the summer doing like yield checks and just like an evaluation of like how we did on our weed control throughout the year to that point. Or we don't really spray any type of fungicides or anything like that, so maybe looking to see what kind of pressure there is there as well before harvest. And then fall obviously would be a lot of harvesting, and then also doing some primary tillage with deep ripping and whatnot, trying to get manure spread, chicken manure spread ahead of a corn crop, and maybe incorporating that into the field. Then doing soil tests in fields and seeing like what all we might need to look at, over the winter as far as a micronutrient need is concerned. So now we'll get into the individual months here. I'll kind of go back to the last slide that you'll see, but we don't have a farm that's on open roads all season. So from late January through early April, we do have posted roads. So we try to market our grain in December, January, and also like after April. Obviously, marketing it in April generates some problems when you're trying to be in the field as well. So anyway, doesn't always work out that well, but luckily we kind of live in the middle of two townships, and I have a good relationship with both road commissioners, and they do give us permission to haul on roads when the conditions are fit. We also spend a lot of time going over our crop plans and making sure that we have the appropriate amount of seed ordered, maybe thinking about what new pieces of equipment we're adding, or what's broken, and making a plan for fixing things in the spring in the coming months. And then also purchasing inputs as well, whether that be chicken manure that was not applied or other micronutrients. February, which is where we're at now, doing a lot of resting and trying just to get ready for the coming season. It doesn't hit quite as hard as it did when we were growing vegetables, so that's nice, but you still want to be rested and make sure that you're tending to your body with any like aches or pains or stiff muscles that you might have. But in this picture here, we're frost seeding some clover onto a wheat field. And maybe a few days ago, that would have been the right time to do it here in the Midwest, where you have a nice warm spell coming up where the clover seed can get sucked down into the thawing ground. And then going to conferences as well. A lot of times we would go to the Moses Conference or Marble Seed Conference or PFI, which is where I know a number of y'all from. But and then this past week we went to the Land Connections Organic Grains Conference. So, excuse me. March begins machinery repairs, obviously, in this picture here. We'd like to be a little bit further along than we are in March with this one, but that's another story for another time. We're going to try to.
Hans, I'm going to interrupt you. Mark has a question in the chat, so I'm just going to let you know while you're still in that time of year. Mark wants to know, is the manure conventional CAFO manure, or is it from a certified organic farm?
It is conventional manure, but we have the I'd have to go back and look at it, but it's a release that we got from the operators of the hatchery, or I'm not honestly even sure where it's coming from, but I have a release saying that it does not contain any prohibited, I think it's arsenic or heavy metals that would be prohibited in use for organic production. In around Roanoke, there's a pretty big community of organic growers that have kind of cornered the market. And I just kind of go in with those guys and use their source of manure. So it's kind of coming from the same source or sources that all the other chicken manure is coming from. Hopefully that answers the question. So yeah, in March, we're focusing on doing a lot of machinery repairs, doing things like replacing sweeps on field cultivators, trying to get cultivators back in order so when cultivating season hits, we're not scrambling. Last year, but for our camera guided cultivator, we bought rolling shields that were supposed to be very easy to install, and we waited until the day before. We wanted to use it to install them, and naturally, it delayed the progress that we were hoping to make, and it turned into a longer project than we had wanted, and didn't quite get going on time. So, um, late winter, early spring is the time to be doing those things, and not the day before you try to head out to the field. And like I said, hopefully the freezing and thawing is kind of subsided with where we're at here in central Illinois by March, and we can still resume hauling grain if we didn't get it all hauled um, in January. So April, we really look to start making those passes through our fields, and not that we're making unnecessary passes, but like I said, we're trying to make thoughtful tillage passes. So each one obviously has a purpose. This photo here is from a wet spring where we had a very nice crop of vetch, but I think this is actually in late May that we were taking this down, and we were trying to get corn planted within about a week. So, timely termination of cover crops is important. And the corn was kind of stunted because we didn't get all the residue decomposed in time. But let's see, this would have been in 2023, I believe. So it was a pretty wet spring. And there may have been a small window, but we were trying to fix more nitrogen. So you live and you learn, I suppose. But, like I said, we're trying to level our fields, get a good seed bed made, and trying to, in the fields where we're going to have soybeans, take care of some of the cornstalk residue so we can get through with blind cultivation or tine weeder, and not wind up having our tine weeder turn into a 30-foot rake. And then making thoughtful passes after that, after a rain and after we see white threads, and trying to work through those cycles of weeds before we plant our crop. And one thing I'm a big proponent of that I learned with growing vegetables is that when you're making these passes, you want to set your tillage equipment as shallow as possible after you've made your initial pass. So you're not bringing more weed seeds up to the surface that are going to germinate later. And if you can have a 2 to 3 inch depth of tillage, then you're going to wind up not bringing more weed seeds up that may be dormant 3+ inches down. So getting a good soil finisher has been key in achieving this goal for us. So just a second. So May, we're trying to get our fields prepped for planting, and then obviously getting into planting. One thing we learned the last couple of seasons, especially with organic, is to not get too excited about getting out to the field. We didn't make enough stale seed bedding passes with our soil finisher, so we had the problem of having too much grass coming up later in the season, and a few other nasty weeds too, that maybe if we would have been more patient and waited for another rain or something, we could have worked those out of the soil ahead of planting. So I'm not exactly sure what else to say about May there. It's pretty much just two things. And I guess I'll get into a little bit of the initial blind cultivation passes, and that, basically as long as it hasn't rained or something, as soon as you can get back into the field, 2-3 days later, you want to be in the field tine weeding with your tine weeder to try to get ahead of those weeds that are going to be germinating very early. One thing I heard at the conference last week was that some guys were using like spike tooth harrows and having good results with that. I talk like I'm an expert on tine weeding, and I'm not, because we were borrowing neighbors for the last couple of seasons, and when we did use it at the right time, we saw the results, but they needed it about the same time that we do, which is why we decided that this year that was our investment that we're going to make for 26 is getting a tine weeder, so we can use it when we need it and not have to spend the time running back and forth an hour each way with the tractor to pick up and return the tine weeder. So, and June is, hopefully planting is wrapped up by the first week of June or so, and just making passes through the fields, cultivating um, as many times as we can, being out in the fields every couple of days to see, like, are there more weeds that are coming up? Do we need to make another pass? And going back to the tine weeder that we selected, we chose a Treffler because of the independent operation of each one of the tines that it has. So you can get even pressure down over the whole 30-foot section of the tine weeder. So if you have a valley and, 20 to 25 feet, you've got a little valley in your pass. That valley is going to get the same soil disturbance as the rest of the implement that is traveling over that cultivation pass. We don't have super like sexy and new cultivators. This is the primary tool that we use, which is a international 12-row front mount cultivator. You can go really slow, not throw a lot of dirt, but in a crop like we see here in these soybeans, like, it's probably not exactly the height of soybeans in June, but we are going to be throwing more dirt and try to cover up weeds in the row. But as you can see, the grass and maybe a few lamb's quarters there are probably beyond the state of being covered up. So July is continued cultivating um, off into the sunset, but and here's I guess the image of our more technologically advanced cultivator with this is a 6-row camera guided cultivator that has finger readers on it as well. Up until this past season, we did not have GPS, so this was a really awesome tool to have to get in early and cultivate really close to the crop. But obviously in August, we hope our soybeans are a little bit bigger than they are in this photo, but hopefully in August, we're wrapping up cultivating, maybe making a few spot checks if, we had to replant something, and cultivating that individually. But we're scouting fields for disease and pest pressure and looking at crop development as well. September starts the rush towards harvest, and maybe even August we start working on stuff. Our purchase in 25 was adding a draper to our operation for harvesting, and that was a great purchase, but it was very complicated in switching over from a John Deere to a Case combine. So um, never too early to start prepping for harvest, I suppose. But we're working on grain bins and grain handling equipment to make sure that when the time is right to go, that hopefully we're eliminating some bumps in the road and making life a little bit easier for us. Um, we're very blessed to have a lot of on-farm storage on my mom's farm. So there was a lot of work that we had to do over the last couple of years to get that back up and running. So hopefully, like in the coming seasons, it will be a lot less of a headache. But we try to look at that as an investment as well. And also going with that, we don't have semis either, but because we aren't all that spread out, we can get by with. So we have four decent sized gravity wagons for like excess storage, and then we have two like 400 bushel grain trucks that we use, and that can keep up with our combine very easily. So again, September we're doing prep on all of the things that we're going to be using in harvest. And as you may have guessed, October is harvest for the most part. Um, might begin harvesting some soybeans or something like that in late September, depending upon how the year goes. But for the most part, all of October is harvest. Maybe we'll try to get in and start planting wheat if we're going to have wheat that year in mid-October after we get beans off. But um, for the most part, we're really just focusing on harvest because inevitably um, something is going to break and will probably delay you a little bit more than you expected as far as like a combine repair is concerned. So November, hopefully we're wrapping up with harvest by the first part of the month and getting into some fall tillage, applying fertilizers, and doing some cover crop seeding. Um, and the other thing that is on there that I didn't list was before the ground freezes, going out and getting soil samples if we're going to be looking at some areas that need improvement or applying micronutrients or something like that. And then December, um, we start to move some of our grain. At that point, probably in August or so, we're starting to have conversations with guys that we're selling our grain to because we kind of have an idea as to what those yields are going to be and based on pricing and like what storage availability that we have, we will try to start moving something out in December before those weight restrictions hit on January 20th. Um, and then we're wrapping up field work at that point. So the one thing I did forget to mention is that I do have my right hand man, Luther, who works with us probably 3/4 of the year. He's full time uh, during that period of time. And he was the guy who was up on the grain bin there in that last slide. But um, he's really good with working on mechanical things and helping troubleshoot things. And sometimes it helps when you have someone like that who isn't thinking about the five other things that have to happen and can just sit down and look at the operator's manual for a serrator and not worry about, the truck that's coming in, 2 hours that we got to be ready for. And our relationship has worked really well with that. And he's helped me figure out a lot of things. And a lot of times he just takes the lead on those things because he's worked for me for like, what is it, Katie? 5 or 6 years? This is his sixth season, I think.
He actually started with us in 2020 during COVID. He worked at the Olive Garden, and when the restaurant shut down, he took shut down temporarily because of the restrictions, and so we hired him to work on the vegetable farm. And I think he's never even once considered going back to the restaurant world after that.
And I guess the other thing we could say to that too is like the farm that we were borrowing the tine weeder from is just up the road in Funk's Grove. And anyway, like I said, it's an hour drive with the tractor, but they also have, I think they're the only maple syrup farm in Illinois, right? I think you're on mute. Anyway, so he goes and works for them in the off season. So he's basically got year-round work when he wants it, and that's been a really good mutual relationship with that farming family as well. And they also have organic acres too, and very very like-minded, and it's great to have them in our community as well. Any questions?
Mark has a question in the chat, actually, Hans. He was asking for clarification on the cultivation. Is it 3 cultivators, 2 that are 6-row and 1 that is 12-row?
Let me close out of this. Yes, it is just the 112-row cultivator that is front mount. And then we have the 6-row rear mount that is camera guided. And then we have a rotary hoe as well that's 30 foot. And then we're adding the tine weeder as well. So that's basically what we're doing for our cultivation.
He said, "What's the best one?" I don't know if you can see
That's
the
the
chat
best one.
box now, but okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The best one, if I had a 12-row camera cultivator, that would be the best one. But the 6-row or the 12-row front mount cultivator, it feels good to cover a lot of acres. So we purchased that from an old retiring grain farmer over in Champaign. And we did have aspirations of using that to do like 3 beds at a time when we were growing vegetables, but then we started doing grain. And basically, because we knew we had that and we knew we were going to be building our grain operation at that point, that is why we chose our like 12-row system. I think based on the tractors and stuff that we have or we could afford to purchase, 16 rows would be too much. And like with 16 rows, we can only be as wide as 8 rows if we were going down, and I'd rather do 12 rows than 8 rows. So it feels good to run that and cover a lot of acres. So I guess we do have a 6-row front mount cultivator that has not been used for a number of years as well. So, but
I don't know why I did not mean to raise my hand. I don't have to raise my hand. Hans, would you speak to one thing I'd like you to mention is when our organic certification is and what your prep looks like for that?
Sure. So usually our organic certification is sometime in August, which is nice because it's easy to fit it in as opposed to somebody showing up when we're trying to plant or harvest. I know a lot of people get scared or concerned about it, but it is a piece of cake because we did vegetables before, and certifying 50 different crops with multiple plantings per year was quite a pain in the butt. So it is a lot easier when you're basically have one planting date for each field. And it is a lot easier to manage. And because like Luke and I, you know, have working documents and stuff like that we go back and forth with like Google Sheets or Google Documents, like if I'm making a list, he's checking it off or making some kind of note in that document, and I use that as records as well. So, um, yeah.
I think the only other thing that and again, please, if anybody else has questions, feel free to step in. But you mentioned, that you're working with these. I think it was in Roanoke, these farmers for the chicken manure, the chicken litter, and the time weeder, relationship that you had that was pretty far away. And we definitely work with the funks with different, trading off on different tools, but where else do you see the possibility of collaboration with other local grain growers, organic or not, that could be, good ideas for the farmers on here to think about too? And I didn't tell you that question was coming, so
I
you're
mean,
not getting any special treatment.
I think we're the only certified organic farm in Logan County. Um, so it just kind of feels like there's not a lot of support there, which is why we associated a lot with growers in Wisconsin and kind of broadened our net. The funks are definitely like obviously a great resource to have, and like Johnny and I, text back and forth or talk to each other while we're planting and stuff. So um, I guess what I would say to that is going to your regional, conferences, maybe even if they're not organic, you can still find some like-minded folks and maybe get, people into your web that you can bounce ideas off of and use as a support system.
Yeah. Last thing I'll ask, and then we can open it up is, and I'm asking this partly, it's self-serving. So you have different times throughout the year where you need help, right? And
Yep.
sometimes it's me helping,
Yep.
and oftentimes it's Luther, but Luther isn't also necessarily employed year-round full-time either. Can you speak to the seasonality of the help that you need and what types of help when?
Um, I mean, harvest is the biggest push. Um, and also there's, my dad, he helps us at harvest. He does parts runs, and sometimes I can get him in a tractor too. But for the most part, that's a big part in the support system as well, to have somebody who can go get a nipple off the vacuum line for the planter, when that breaks. So, um, anyway, um, harvest is definitely the heavier time. I didn't mention too that on our conventional land, there's a guy that hunts there, and him and his dad like offered to pay for it. Due to that lease, we couldn't accept money, but we let them use the property for their help in running the trucks. So, and they can do other stuff too. But that's a good relationship that we have as well. And a lot of times, like we see that what we're doing in our support system, like we're all helping each other out too. So,
Yeah. And Luther in his winter hours, Hans, that's kind of a unique situation. Would you speak to that?
yeah, him working with the funks, doing or sap, making maple syrup is is a pretty cherry situation as well, because we don't have to hope that he's going to come back when planting season comes around again. Um, that's an extremely seasonal thing, and they need the help when I don't. He still comes and helps, like clean out a bin, or if there's multiple trucks coming back to back, like he's got the flexibility to help me there. And like I'm I'm his first love, so he's
He's loyal. He is loyal.
He's loyal. Yep. Sorry.
Yeah. Mark says, "What is the most difficult weed?" I can hear him coughing in the other room, Mark. So hold on, just a second. He's got a big one, a big cough.
Grass or foxtail is just giving us fits. So that's
Can you repeat that again? You kind of cut out at the beginning. Foxtail.
foxtail grass.
Yeah.
That is the biggest problem. And I've talked to a number of growers, and that's why we put our focus on getting a tine weeder and the model of brand of tine weeder that we got. We do have a little giant ragweed on some corners, and I forgot to mention that in August or July we are going in there and roguing that out by hand. So, or maybe mowing down a corner of the field, just so it doesn't go to seed and become a bigger problem.
Great. Okay. Anybody else? Because I'm gonna send Hans to rest. Any other thoughts or questions? Okay. Well, thank you, Hans, so
Yeah.
much for doing this, and
Sorry for the coughing.
you did really good. You coughed much less than I thought, so thank you so much for coming on, and yeah, we're grateful for your insight today. So you can go ahead and you can stay on as long as you want, or you can go to bed. It's completely up to you.
All right.
All right.
Take
care. Wonderful. Okay. So in lieu of a break so that we can get all the goodness from Seneca, I'm going to transition over and welcome Seneca Murley. She's from Clarkson Farm to share her really unique perspective too, as both a farm manager of a farm that she doesn't even live near, which is pretty cool and interesting, but also growing different types of grain than Hans and I do. So Seneca, I'm gonna turn it over to you and go on mute.
Let's see if I can share. What? Let's see. Do we have my presentation up?
We do.
Oh, great. I think we are in the different. This is a different looking section, so I'm now I'm perplexed. How much advance? Okay. All right. Oh yeah, here we are. We're good. All right. Thanks for having me, Katie, and the Land Connection. Yeah, I'm Seneca, and let me get to our next slide. There we are. That is my mom, Karen, and my father, Lynn, and we're Clarkson Farm in Cerro Gordo, which is just east of Decatur. It is a larger size family farm. We've been farming organically for 10 years, but as a family over 100. And I do live in Colorado, and I am a farm manager. So I'm not the one who's operating. I'm the one who's kind of got the mastermind to everything that's happening on the farm. I'm lucky to still have both of my parents still very involved. And Lynn especially makes a lot of decisions. Some of you may be familiar with him. He owns and founded Clarkson Grain Company, also in Cerro Gordo. For the last 50 years, that company has started with identity preserved and then moved into non-GMO and organic grain. So we, as the farm, the family farm, have chosen and specifically focused on growing all of our corn and soybeans as the food grade crop that we sell to Clarkson Grain. There certainly are other grain companies in central Illinois and throughout Illinois, but mostly when you hear me talking tonight, it will be related to the food grade world of Clarkson Grain. Let's see. We do have third crops besides corn and soybeans. The elusive third crop it's a challenge for a lot of grain-based farmers to find great markets for. We grow wheat, winter wheat, and we also grow alfalfa hay. So as we get into the program, I'll be showing some things about that. I too kind of went in a quarterly thinking on this. Oh, I liked Hans's descent. I liked him going off the traditional quarters. But I've got January through, our traditional January through March, April through May, et cetera. Because I'm a manager, I'm going to give you likely less detail on the field operation side and evenly weighted, I would say, with what management, organic record keeping, finances, and human resources, kind of all the things that happen all the time on the farm, with some of the pinch points of where they happen. So starting off January through March, these are what I'm going to call our operations, what we are doing in the field. So as Hans said, we are a lot of the time still very much managing the grain that we have harvested this past fall. It's really important, and one of the things I really stress with organic food grade is the drying, conditioning, and monitoring and tracking of your quantities of the grain you have in your bins. Most contracting is through August, so I am keeping the grain throughout a longer period of time than you might be on a cash farm. As Hans was saying, he kind of focused on December and March, maybe March, April. So we really have to take good care of it. And we'll talk about that through the rest of this presentation. But so we are, but we do begin to start to move some of that grain in January. And we are also already thinking about 26 crop, stockpiling manure. And one thing I like to point out labor-wise is, and Mark had questions about the manure source. So currently we're using both raw manure, which is turkey manure, and that's brought in a raw form and dumped in some stockpiling areas in our fields. It doesn't require any labor on our part, but we are also purchasing pelleted chicken manure from Herbrooks. There are other vendors there. At the moment I'm using some Herbrooks, and those require, usually the trucking I can get, I need belts or other ways of getting that out of a hopper binned truck. So there's some labor in meeting those trucks during the winter. And as I mentioned later, with snow and belt issues and things like that, it can get tricky. The not popular job on the farm this time of year is the pest control, rodent control, but it is really important and is really monitored by organic certification. So I have lots of traps, and I have folks that really need to be looking at that. So during this season and throughout the year, this farm, and as mentioned, we're a larger farm, we have 2 full-time employees. So, they are basically doing all of that loading of the trucks, loading hay, the alfalfa that we sell, cleaning. There are times where the weeds just get too much in organic, and we have found the use of a seed cleaner. So the one that we have is called a Metro seed cleaner. I've got pictures of that a little bit later on. To clean out either going into a bin, weed seed and foreign material, or cleaning out on the other end, often at times can be bugs or other FM and things like that. So it's been a key item for us. And repairing equipment, as Hans talked about, some of the cold weather issues. The icon here, or the screenshot here, I wanted to highlight. This is something we're experimenting with. It's a bit of a beta stage right now, but this is it's called Centaur Analytics, and it is an online portal that has physical sensors that we've installed at some of our bin sites that monitors temperature of the grain, moisture of the grain, quantity of the grain. It does some AI-based analysis of, highs and lows. This is all remote censored. It doesn't have cords, so it's somewhat sophisticated. And something we really like, and it's really changed the labor on our farm, is it has the ability to manually turn aeration fans and not heat, but aeration fans on and off. And it has the ability to schedule those around weather. So ideal weather, like you kind of see here, they're saying that today or yesterday was going to be a good window to be air drying if we need. We don't have that on all of our bins. Like I said, we're just kind of getting started, seeing if this is going to work for us. So there still is quite a bit of time with our grain farm where we do physically go turn the heat on and off, turn fans on and off, sampling grain, monitoring for water intrusion, bugs, etc. So this is the management aspects of things that happen in the winter. So we are ordering seeds, other inputs, attending conferences, purchasing equipment, trying to work on repairs that might be done by a third party, analysis for cash rent. If we have cash rent farms, there's some analysis and payment that happens. Crop insurance deadlines, marketing, again, with the third crop. And my particular market with organic hay has ebbed and flowed, but currently has quite a lot of Amish communities, which often are almost always on the phone. And so they take a lot of time trying to manage even getting them an invoice. They would prefer that I mail it to them, kind of thing. So, and constantly looking for new markets. We love growing sunflowers, would like to find ways to keep growing sunflowers, other types of markets. So there's kind of organic record keeping, I think, is always important at every quarter of the year that you're thinking about it. As Hans mentioned, ours renews every, for us, it's January 30th, February 1st. It used to be later. We're with OnMark certification. And there's really two main, I find, bulky, really data-heavy areas that we have to track. And one of them is all of your sales, deliveries, bill of ladings, lot numbers, tickets, settlements. There's a whole kind of piece to that. So I wanted to highlight, this is a software I use. It's quite affordable. It's called Bushel Farm. This is a recent load. They have a storage and loads tab they've gotten a lot better with in their design. It basically captures all of that information that's going to be required for both my harvest recording and an inspection later on, including moisture, our lot number system. I match that to my delivery and sales sheets, and then very nicely, I find, is that I can have an electronic picture of the bill of lading and the scale ticket, which are all required in an inspection. Not every single one will be looked at, but you will be randomly asked to produce one. So you have to keep track of every single one of them. And this here is just showing that it can be done on the phone as well. They have a mobile app, and you can mobily take a picture of the ticket and the bill of lading as you're moving through the grain elevator. And lastly, we have finances. So Katie asked, to kind of talk about pinch points in finances. And the beginning of the year is an inflow period of cash because we typically always focus all of our deliveries of our crops in that early part of the year. At the end of the year, and at the beginning of the year, I'm reconciling all of the previous year, closing the books, working with an accountant, doing taxes, which is right now, and doing future cash budgets for this year and enterprise budgeting. And I think also important is HR, again, with our farm having 2 full-time employees, and it grows, as we'll see in a little bit. There are things like workers' comp, health insurance, which is always a challenge. We have an HSA plan that we work with them on. I do payroll. I do ways to help them to take care of themselves in the winter. So there's some health incentives that I'm starting to work with them on. And I do really encourage them to take a vacation. They get vacation hours, and I think it's really important. And we really like them to do it now and not in May when we really need them. One of them just had a baby and had perfect timing. We were really grateful they had that all figured out. I do use Paychecks. There are other payroll providers, but the one thing I wanted to note is that they have a time and attendance feature. My folks really like that because they can clock in on their phone and clock out on their phone multiple times in a day, and it keeps track of all of their accrued vacation, sick time, and there's just a lot of HR things and details that I'm really happy to have a payroll provider for. Moving into spring, again, here's our operations, what we're really doing out on the fields and in our bins, continuing to monitor and manage the 2025 crop. Again, one of our most important things, that is literally where your cash is sitting, is in your grain bin. So I always, every morning when I kind of think about what am I got to do today, and especially in the winter, when you don't have anything in the ground, it's definitely taking care of what you have in your bin. And one note I wanted to make here, I'm not going to get too much into agronomic decisions about organic row crop, but some of the food grade corns especially are going to have longer growing periods, longer CRMs, and those needs do mean that oftentimes we are harvesting at a wetter moisture than a conventional grain, even organic grain crop farmer might be doing. This year we had a drought, things were pretty dry, and we were probably harvesting at 15, but organic blue corn, and you can see with those long days, still came in at 16. But in other wetter, later years, we've harvested organic blue corn up to 19%, even into late November. So when I'm talking about drying grain, we really are drying grain and managing in January and February. Planting happens for us in May and June. There is quite a lot of manure that's been delivered. A lot of all those stages that Hans talked about with the seed deliveries, spreading the manure, field work before planting, lots of field work after. We basically bring on 2 custom operators. So this farm has typically used custom operators, and as we've grown to organic, we added our full-time employees. So the custom operators we still use, and luckily one became certified organic as well, and the other fully understands what we're doing. And they do a lot of our, especially that high-speed tillage, terminating the cover crops before we plant, because they have bigger tractors than we do. And they have rotary hoe. We have a combination of their equipment and our equipment, and that's kind of growing and ebbing and flowing as every year. This year we're adding our own flaming equipment that we just purchased. So our staff, which still is 2, we have a third that rotates in when we need her more. We are in the high hour time frame now of April through June. They're still moving old crop, they're planting some things, and they themselves do rotary hoe, flaming, tine weeding, all those things you can see, and mowing. I made in capital letters. Because another thing in organic that is important are your buffer strips between your neighbors to prevent cross-contamination. And one of the ways that we can own that buffer strip can be roadsides and actually planted buffer strips. And so we have to mow that ourselves. So there's quite a lot of mowing work that happens in the summer, starting in the spring. And then I have a different custom hire person that I use for solely the alfalfa portion of our work. Lucky I have one. He's a neighbor. He has his own cattle. And so he's doing my alfalfa planting, mowing, raking, baling. We move the bales off the field and into our storage area. We do some pest monitoring, especially for cutworm moths and other moths, and trapping. And, as every farmer will tell you, the spring, especially in Illinois, is all about the windows and when you can get in. So you have very peak windows and hard to know ever how many windows you get. And the management side, there is a lot of observation. I like to look in the late spring at what cover crops, how much we got established from the prior fall, take pictures. I do scouting. We're measuring our crop stands, our rows, our seed counts, looking at the early weed pressure. I am already starting to market the wheat and the wheat straw that I know is coming, that's going to be harvested in late June. We are also, the first crop of hay usually comes off late May, early June. I'll show you that in a minute. There's a lot of information I like to capture with that in order to market it. Having to start 2027 crop planning already, because if you're planting wheat, you've got to know that. You've got to be ordering and finalizing rotations for your 27 crop year. And there's an FSA planning report in June, some other things, that we do with FSA. Record keeping in the spring along those lines of the buffer strips. I do neighbor notifications where I notify all road commissioners, highways, utilities, even the flight airports where they have spraying companies located. And I have a few neighbor agreements where I'm able to not have buffer strips. So I make sure all that's done in the spring. And another big thing I do in the spring is I do an organic SOP training. So that's standard operating protocol. Sounds really official, but I basically bring in all of my employees and all of our custom operators, truckers, anyone that we're working with, and we go over all of our cleaning processes, procedures. They have the whole packet, and we discuss. I give them actually a little gift bag of organic treats that gets everybody to come in and talk to me. And we sign an organic agreement. So I am not having them physically sign something every single time. And I work that out with my certifier. Other certifiers may or may not like that, but works for us in a really great way. And the other great piece on the record keeping that Bushel provides is activity record keeping. So this is an example of an activity where we were adding a cover crop in the late fall. And it can give you, everything you need for your inspections and for your record keeping. And you can add, couldn't get it in my screenshot, but you can also attach pictures if you have photos or seed tags. Super helpful. And this is a scouting example that Bushel has as well. So this is an example of one of my marketing pieces for the alfalfa that we sell. And just so these things have to happen in that moment, it can't happen later because the moment is gone. So I try and get on everyone to take pictures when it's in the field, take pictures when we're baling. And then very shortly thereafter, we're sampling all of our hay cuttings and sending them off to labs in order to get analysis that often informs the pricing I can get for my organic large square bales. Small bales are different market. Finances and HR in the spring, still somewhat in an inflow period, but larger outflows start to hit, including if you have any equipment mortgages or real estate mortgages and real estate payments. There's first of two are going to come in June. So there's a lot of monthly accounting and budgeting that happens. With my staff, things are very busy. One of the things we started to use is another tool that I use. Again, remember I'm in Colorado, so I use Slack, and Slack is a kind of like a text or a Microsoft Teams if you use Teams, but I don't find Microsoft is great for farm staff. But Slack just works really easy, and we have multiple channels for all the different types of things we do on the farm. And it ends up being almost our first place where we capture something. So this was an example of a hay sale or a hay delivery. Someone came and picked it up. They take a picture of the bill of lading. They take a picture of the truck for me. And then I or somebody else will go back and actually get that into our bushel. And then down here, a new feature they've added is they do a huddle which is basically just like what we're doing, but it happens real quick. It's like a little face-to-face meeting, but it has AI note keeping capabilities. We started doing it once a week on Fridays in the morning during the season, and then it captures everything we talk about and just gives us little notes and to-dos, because most of the time we're just talking about to-dos, and that's been a super helpful thing to have. And I do as well kind of pull for some other staff for the mowing, um, and um, and so the summer we'll bring in other kind of local staff as well. Now, this is my PowerPoint slide. This is definitely not the farm. And definitely nobody's doing that at the farm right now, but I couldn't figure out how to change it. So, um, okay, so July through September, um, which would really be summer, but again, it's maybe a little different. But anyways, our summer, we do have wheat harvest if we're doing rye and straw baling. A lot of time in the field is row cultivation, as Hans talked about, and we do weed zapping. That's a picture of the weed zapper that is ours, that we do our fields. We did some custom work with it for other neighbors, but have found we like to use it a lot on our own fields. We are still probably delivering the last of our 2025 crop in this time frame. As I mentioned, it can go all the way to September. And I am starting to move my 26 hay that's been cut if I've got destinations for it, usually straw. Again, the same 2 to 3 full-time employees, a lot of mowing still, a lot of time in cabs and tractors with the zapping, moving crops and mowing. And my one custom operator that I need for my 3 additional cuttings of hay. We kind of go for 4 cuttings every year. We're looking for army worms and some other pests like that. And we start to really look at our bins for any potential bug issues that are coming, because summer is the time. And as Hans mentioned, towards the end of the year, we should be empty of everything of our old crop. That's when we're going to take the time to clean out our bins, sweep, vacuum, sometimes even remove floors and clean underneath that. That's a bigger project, but we have done it, especially if we've had a badly bug-infested bin, and we prep with diatomaceous earth. And this is kind of your peak weed pressure time as well.
Seneca, can we pause for just a second
Yeah.
for a couple questions that are in the chat? Mark had a question about grain bin control, the Agrisure track. I'm trying to read what he's saying. The Agrisure track is 8K per bin. And do you remember how much it was for the Centaur per bin?
No, I don't, but I can get that for you, Mark.
And then the annual, and is there an annual user fee for Centaur?
Combination of some equipment you purchase, there's an annual fee, um, and it's based on bin volume size, not usage. Those are the things I can tell you right now, but I don't know couldn't give you the numbers. But I can also give you in touch. They're a Greek company. We are kind of highly allergic to the thought of running these corded temperature gauge type things, because we have stirrators in some of our bins, and it just don't like the idea. We hear most of the time that they get to become a problem. So we really like the idea of having remote sensing. But we're still in a learning curve with it too. I will say I'm not 100% on it yet. But I really like the ability to be able to remotely manage bins. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then also, can we go to the weed zapper, which I think, is something that a lot of us have never seen in action or smelled in action. It has a distinct smell too. It's a pretty fun piece of equipment. But Mark asked, can you zap over the top of tasseled corn?
No, we have not done that. Yeah, not even with that tall Hagee, we have not been able to do that. No. Or perhaps felt the need, but because the soybean need was so much greater to be in. But we have done some volunteer rye over wheat. So some other types of, other crops, not corn. And I think we could do some things with alfalfa. We've thought about it, but most of the time we end up going, well, we're going to cut it anyway. So, it's not worth it on the alfalfa.
It sounds like Mark's nemesis is giant ragweed.
Yeah, yeah, I saw you say that. And that is not our nemesis right now. I've seen it. Largely for us, we have tamed a lot of what used to be our nemesis, which was water hemp from the weed zapper. But the weed zapper does not do a good job with what we call velvet leaf. Velvet leaf really crests and covers just over, and you just don't get that distance. And it's got kind of multiple leaves that are quite strong. So that is our current nemesis. And another picture I'll show you, we did have some walking crews too, some roguing. You want me to keep going, or you want to?
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
So let's see, farm management for the summer. So we talked about some of the observation and marketing, pictures. I'm trying to kind of move along. I don't want to get to too many of the details, but there is important to be starting to order cover crop seeds. It's kind of bit me a couple times because everything's so busy in the summer, and I'm like, oh yeah, I got to get seed again. And so we do quite a lot of fall cover crop planting. So, and that takes a lot of coordination because I'm part of some MRCS programs that reward us nicely for planting, but they have very specific planting dates where they want us to be planting earlier than I'm getting any of my crops off, and I need to be planting even multiple species. So there's a lot of planning for that, ordering the manure for the wheat, ordering wheat seed. Land management, I think, is important not to forget as well. If you own land, because you're going to be getting letters about solar, you're going to be getting letters about wind, battery, utility easements, all kinds of things. So there's time that needs to be devoted to that and reviewing those things and working with lawyers if you use them. It's a good time as well to do field days. There's great summertime field days I often send my staff because I think it's really valuable for them to physically get to other farms and see what other people are doing, and gives them a day off. And we also tend to have our organic inspection in the summer, although, it can happen at any time. And I have had it quite late. I've had it as late as October or November, I think. This is just an example of all the forms I just turned in for my renewal at the end of January. And one thing I like to highlight that I learned I've been inspected now, I think 7 years, that you think they send you a renewal packet, and I thought that's all I need to do, but actually the renewal packet you must do, and then you got to look and see if each and every other one of these issues that they're wanting you to check, if there's been any changes, you have to go in and make those changes and send that update and send them to them. And then what happens is you get inspected, let's say in August. Well, 6 months later, 7 months later, a lot could have changed. So in essence, you're really doing the same thing again. Mark, I see you smiling. You might as well think of it as the same amount of work twice, because you really do need to have everything updated, especially your seeds. And a lot just happened in the spring and summer, and even what you're ordering for the fall. So the two big bulk things of tracking are all the sales, besides activities, and then this inventory, an inventory of seeds you purchased and all of the associated data that they would like from you, from your invoices, seed tags. If it's not organic, you must have letters, seed searches. And then if you have things left over, there's an inventory that has to be accounted for and where that's located, and then what's to come. And I find that to be time consuming. There's definitely a tightening of the cash period. You've paid for a lot of things, especially manure is a upfront cost, and you haven't sold any of that crop yet or delivered any crop yet. The second of your loan payments are going to be due, and also real estate taxes. So you're starting to feel the pinch more. And like I mentioned, we do look for some additional help. This is a picture of our high schoolers that we have hired in the past. They were an entertaining crew, and there were some fun things that happened, but we have worked hard to not hire more high schoolers by using the weed zapper that we have. But even the weed zapper, like I mentioned, can't get everything. Don't really like using kind of professional roguing crews. They're quite expensive, but have experimented with them with really bad areas. Okay, fall harvest time for us is almost always October, November, very rarely in September. Again, kind of those longer season, back to what I mentioned about longer season corns, even soybeans. Some can come off very early October in time to get wheat on. This year was dry. Things got done in early October, but often you can even find us harvesting soybeans in October. This is a picture of the interseeder that our neighbor and custom operator, Dennis Bork, made that allows us to get some of those cover crops in before the crop has come off. And that's pretty key, again, for these NRCS programs, because I'm able to get crop that actually still grows. There's just timing to it, and we don't need to get into agronomics of it, but it's an important part of our staffing and the equipment that we need. We have experimented with drones. We're third parties, and we do, when possible, also do post-harvest drilling, air seeding, and field work. Still the same group. Our group does. We have our own combine. We do harvest our own corn. We move similar to Hans. We don't have semis, so we do move with tractors and wagons. All of our farms are within 5 miles of each other, and we are fortunate to have 3 bin sites within those 5 miles. So we're never traveling that far. But it's a lot of traveling. So we oftentimes do bring in some retired guys that want to just be able to drive a tractor. I have one of Dennis, one custom operator who does our wheat and soy harvesting. We might be applying lime. That is one third party that we use. It's a peak bin filling time, back again, and just stressing again the importance of really taking care of your food grade organic grain with the heat drying, the electric air drying. Slow, gentle, very low plenum temperatures is super important. We've learned that one the hard way as well, because it gets cold quick, and then there are chances and times when you will be called and asked to see if you could bring something in. If you can't, if your corn is not in condition at the right temperature, which is 14.5, moisture. We've tried to kind of hurry that process along and added too much heat, and that can result, especially during cold days, can result in cracked and split grain, which is a really a bad result for food grade clients, which is who we're ultimately growing for, that are going to make food. They're looking for consistency in their cooking. They're looking for kernels that are all going to change consistency at the same time. And if it's split and cracked, it messes it up. So, grain companies will dock you for those things. And so again, learning and taking the time to take care of your organic food grade is really an important part. We're almost there. As I've been alluding to, this is when we actually contract for the food grade grain. So those contracts will happen typically in November. And the reason why that's pretty early, and that's something to really think about, that you will know where your seed will be sold, what you grow will be sold the prior November before it's even planted. You'll know your price, you'll know your quantity, and you know where you're going to be delivering it. It's a really nice thing about organic row crop farming. And by them providing to that in November, we can take advantage of early seed prepayment discounts. We grow white corn that comes from Pioneer. Their prepayment seed deadline is typically December 7th or 8th. So all those decisions are made before then. Not to say that you can't sign up after and into the new year, probably into March. You could be contracting with Clarkson Grain or other types of food grade buyers. But you may miss those prepayment deadlines or for tax reasons, you may want to be buying those things in December. So, and already you're thinking about your next crop and making maps and, manure, as you have probably seen or learned now, is quite one of our biggest inputs. And so making where that's coming from and already beginning to have it delivered and stockpiled because we have, large quantities for our fields. There's a lot of reporting I do. You can see what those are. And again, back to the record keeping. People get super busy during harvest, and I'm really still after them to be doing all their activities. And Bushel allows us to upload harvest maps, and I ask people for just a lot of detail about what happens at harvest so we can have a place that's captured. And then we're kind of restarting for the next year. All new storage locations, all new bill of ladings are made, and we're starting our loads. And lastly, this is your tightest cash management quarter. Again, we've held off most of our deliveries, and then, when we get paid till the next tax year. That's largely for tax reasons. But once you get on your cycle, you're kind of on that cycle. So it is tight time. And so there is also the time when we are renewing our line of credit with our banker, updating your personal financial statement. It's second half of cash rent going out, and end of year budgeting, really doing any tax positioning that you need to do at the end of the year. If you're purchasing anything using a favored tax credit called the 179, you really have to be thinking through how all of that plays out for your tax implications at the year end. And I mentioned that, the third crop, and a lot of those are not contracted. The hay, especially with the Amish folks, I don't have that contracted, and wheat sometimes. So a lot of times I am invoicing and this time of year collecting or trying to get collected. So there's a part of the labor and the staff of what we do on the farm. And again, back to my people, the most important thing and how this all happens is having them. We have great people, and I do their annual reviews in December. I've tried it at different times of the year. December is the month. It's like we can finally take a breath after the whole year, and again, get them to try and do vacation time, and that's the end of our year.
Awesome. So Mark also asked in the chat, what does Pioneer white corn yield approximately?
There are different varieties that we are growing. We have really liked the 1306, and it is doing quite well these days, upwards of over 200 bushels an acre. Anywhere between 180 and 210, I have heard. So that is an excellent. Now, sadly, I am keep hearing that they want to phase out 1306, and they have other numbers. But and I'm sure we think Pioneer does a very good job. But more to the point, that there are favored clients that really, really like those numbers. So the reason why we grow 1306 is because there is a client that really likes to cook with that number. So I don't necessarily get that choice. I mean, when I work with contracting food grade, they are giving me the numbers that I get to choose from, and those are specifically picked for their clients and what their clients want to process food with. So it's an ebbing and flowing, but I've been very pleased with the white corn. Blue corn is a much different story. It's much different.
I think that's such an interesting thought too about how, Seneca growing feed grade, or I'm sorry, food grade corn, you really have multiple customers. You have the buyer, but also the person that's the company that's
Yeah,
processing into a product
yeah,
direct to the consumer, and you have the consumer. Whereas, for Hans and I, we have the buyer.
that's right. And what's something I wanted to mention, when I do my organic certification, I do get it internationally certified, because there is this potential that like you said, that the client of the client of my of the grain company, it could be in another country. Absolutely, they frequently are, and
Yeah,
so they need me to have that certification as well, which isn't much. All it is just checking boxes. It
right.
doesn't. There's a few things you can't do that we don't do.
So Mark wants to know, do you save any seed back and do you speculate on any crops?
Um, I do not save seed back, except for wheat, which is, kind of this for economic reasons. And speculative, no, I don't, unless it's on transition and we're back in the conventional market.
Seneca, I have a question. We just have a minute left, but I what I notice is you're really tech savvy. You've got a lot of great programs, really, and I think that it probably lends to the fact that you're managing a farm a couple
Mhm,
states away. So there's a
mhm.
necessity for these types of programs, but I also think it's a sign of a well-run farm to be able to um, have this type of quality information and data that you're getting. My question for you though is, how was the learning curve for your employees to get them to use this equipment? I just know from a vegetable farm, as a vegetable grower, oftentimes they wanted that type of like ease of recording information, that mechanization and that type of software, but it was hard to get everybody on the same page of using it. And I'm just wondering if you can speak to your experience integrating that amongst multiple team members and even hired contractors.
Right. Oh, the software or for the equipment, or both?
The software. Well, I mean,
Right.
really, it's kind of both, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Different challenges.
Right.
Yeah, it's so true. And certainly some are better than others. And I try and funnel the ones that are good at it, to do that work. There's some that are, she's really online savvy. So I try and get the other people that can't do it to just get it in Slack, is what I say. I'm like, just at a minimum, get it there, and then we have a place capturing what the activity is happening. You need that. It could be a Google Doc. Um, it can be paper, but the more complex you get, the more fields you have, the more people, even custom operators coming in, you need a centralized location for where all of this activity is happening. Or you're going to spend a lot of time right before your renewal and your inspection trying to go back and find it all. And you
Yes.
spend a lot of time doing that anyways. And then for equipment, I would say, we're super fortunate with our customer guys that have been with us through way before when we were conventional, through transition, that they've been willing to be training and mentoring and showing. And my main employee is super eager and excellent at just learning new things. He loves to learn new things. So he's mechanically inclined, but didn't ever grow up on a farm. But it's you find what people are strong, your strengths are, is probably the best answer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. Does anybody else have any other questions they'd like to have asked answered by Seneca? We are right at time, and if you do have anything, I'm sure I can share Seneca's email address. And
Oh yeah, I have here what I gotta ta-da.
there it is.
There it
Lovely. Yeah,
is.
and I'll share that out with you guys. I want to thank you all for being here. I also want to let you know that this is being recorded and it will be out on. I'll share it with everybody who is registered, and then eventually we'll put it up on our YouTube channel. But we'll give you guys a chance to enjoy it first of all. And if you're interested, there are 3 more webinars in this series. The next one is next Tuesday with Gary Zimmer, talking about how to add biological life to your soil without needing outside input. Same time, same place, same day, but you do need to register, so I'm going to put that link in there. And then we have a couple more coming up on grain marketing and a panel of some younger, I shouldn't say younger, they're not younger, they're just newer farmers to grain farming.